Welcome to this explainer. Okay, I want you to picture the health food aisle at your local grocery store. You know the one? It's glossy, perfectly organized, and just absolutely packed with packages promising incredible health benefits. But there is often a pretty stark contrast between that polished marketing we see on the shelves and the rugged, complex reality on the ground. So today, we're going to look closely at a massive staple of the modern diet, quinoa. And we're going to peel back the layers of its incredible journey, literally from the rolling hills of the Andean Plateau straight to your kitchen table.
Now, to really understand this story, we've got to start by shattering a very common illusion. We see the word superfood everywhere, right? But here's the reality. Superfood is actually not a scientific classification at all. It's a marketing invention. No way around it. In fact, regulatory authorities in major consumer markets don't even have an official definition for it. Get this, the European Union actually prohibited the marketing of products as superfoods way back in 2007, unless the packaging included a specific, authorized health claim supported by credible scientific research.
And to really hammer this home, Cancer Research UK has stated quite clearly that the term is, quote, really just a marketing tool with little scientific basis to it. Now look, this isn't to say that ancient grains like quinoa aren't good for you. They are. They're perceived as whole foods, they require minimal processing, and they absolutely have solid nutritional value. But that magical cure-all reputation? Yeah, that's been carefully constructed over the years to drive massive consumer demand.
Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to unpack the quinoa story in 4 clear steps today. First, the superfood marketing myth. Then, the global quinoa boom. Third, the hidden environmental costs. And finally, the social risks for farmers.
So, starting with part 1. The superfood marketing myth, how a healthy seed became a global obsession. Think about a vibrant, colorful quinoa salad. It's an absolute staple of modern food marketing. It's exactly how everyday crops get successfully rebranded as heritage or ancient grains. It's wild. Between the years 2011 and 2015, the number of food products containing the words superfood or supergrain literally doubled. Marketers realized that Western consumers were actively seeking novelty. We wanted exotic foods that felt like, a nutritional silver bullet. And quinoa? Well, it fit that bill perfectly.
That brings us to part 2, the global quinoa boom, the explosive economics of Western demand. I want you to imagine what happens to a local ecosystem when international demand just skyrockets overnight. Starting right around 2009, the world went crazy for quinoa. But this massive global demand was met almost entirely by just 3 South American countries. Peru carried 57% of global production, Bolivia 40%, and Ecuador just 3%. So what does that mean? It means the crushing weight of a global superfood trend landed squarely on the shoulders of farmers in a very specific, concentrated geographic region of the Andes.
Now, what's really interesting is this staggering number, 440%. That represents the sheer explosion in land area occupied for quinoa cultivation in Bolivia over the past 4 decades. For context, Peru also saw a massive 124% increase. Basically, entire landscapes were being rapidly transformed just to keep up with the world's appetite.
And the economics of this are just mind-blowing. During the boom that kicked off in 2009, export volumes grew 18 times over. Prices rose by a whopping 600%. And where was all this quinoa going? Well, in Europe, the top importers were Germany, taking in 26%, the Netherlands at 20%, and France at 17%. Incredible wealth was being generated, and the Andean landscape was fundamentally shifting to feed these highly lucrative European markets.
Which leads us to part 3, the hidden environmental costs, monocropping and the loss of biodiversity. This brings up one of the most tragic hidden costs of this boom, the loss of biodiversity. You see, there are actually around 120 different varieties of quinoa in existence. It's like a giant puzzle of biodiversity. But Western consumers, we mostly just wanted the light-colored, large grains. So to serve that specific global demand, farmers ended up abandoning traditional, sustainable farming practices. They turned to monocropping, growing only about 20 of those 120 varieties for export. This shift deeply impacted fields across the Andean Plateau. By monocropping single-variety quinoa and rapidly mechanizing the land, the crop, and really the surrounding environment as a whole, became highly vulnerable. It made the land much more prone to plant diseases, soil erosion, poor soil quality, and ultimately, even desertification.
Then there's the resource footprint. Now, it is important to note that quinoa inherently has a relatively low water footprint. It sits at about 3,306 cubic meters per ton.
Its carbon footprint is also considered pretty low. But the sudden introduction of industrial, large-scale farming methods heavily stressed the local environment. It reportedly caused wasteful consumption of water, energy, and gas. And on top of that, wastewater actually began polluting nearby local water bodies.
Moving into our final section, Part 4, Social Risks for Farmers, the Human Cost of the Agricultural Gold Rush. So, the crucial point here is that the environmental toll was really just one half of the equation. This boom was a true double-edged sword for the people actually living it. On the positive side, the economic quality of life generally improved. It provided a massive income boost for female farmers, who, by the way, make up 40% of quinoa farmers in Peru and previously had hardly any alternative income sources. However, that sudden wealth also caused intense community conflicts and left a looming threat of a devastating loss of livelihoods whenever the market dropped.
The ground-level frictions were incredibly intense. You see, in Andean communities, land is traditionally held in common. But with the boom, the introduction of large-scale production methods, like using tractors to aggressively clear land, disrupted this completely. To many, it was viewed as a blatant form of land appropriation. Plus, as quinoa farmlands expanded, it pushed out traditional llama farmers. This created serious conflicts as those farmers desperately searched for disappearing grazing land for their animals. Now, tracking this over just a few years really shows how this built a highly dangerous dependency. The boom began around 2009, right? But by 2014 and 2015, the bubble burst. There was a massive drop in both global demand and the price of quinoa. And because farmers had abandoned other crops to solely grow quinoa for export, this crash caused immediate, severe livelihood crises for these families. And looking at the market today, the situation for these Andean smallholder farmers is honestly tougher than ever. Not only are they dealing with degraded soils from the boom years, but they now face entirely unbalanced competition. They're competing against large-scale farmers who have the technology and capital to monopolize the market, and they're even competing against developed nations, like the United States, who have started cultivating and selling their own quinoa. It really forces us to step back and look at the bigger picture. When a marketing term can completely reshape the agricultural, environmental, and social landscape of a region thousands of miles away, we have to ask ourselves, when we buy into a health marketing trend, who is really paying the price for our superfoods? Keep that global supply chain in mind the next time you're walking down the grocery aisle. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it gave you a whole new perspective.